There's something deeply unsettling about a film that ends too cleanly. The hero survives, the villain falls, and the world resets, neat and unscarred. But what if that ending wasn't the original plan? In the shadowy corridors of Hollywood history, there exists a strange phenomenon: final scenes that vanished. Entire endings darker, more ambiguous, more honest, quietly removed after test screenings, studio interference, or fears of backlash. No press release, no explanation, just gone. You might remember watching a film as a child, convinced it ended one way only to discover years later the official version doesn't match your memory. Maybe it was just your imagination, or maybe you caught a glimpse of something that was never meant to last. Some endings are buried because they're too bleak, others because they raise questions studios don't want audiences asking. And in rare cases, scenes are cut not because they don't work, but because they work too well, leaving viewers disturbed long after the credits roll. In today's episode, we're peeling back the curtain on 15 action films that didn't just thrill audiences, they once had final moments that would have changed everything. Endings where the hero died, where evil triumphed, where silence said more than explosions ever could. These aren't alternate endings you can just find on a bonus disc. Many of them were destroyed, overexposed, or quietly locked away. But traces remain in production notes, in editor interviews, in the fading memories of those who saw something different once. Were these scenes deleted for the betterment of the film or to protect a version of reality studios deemed safer? Let's rewind the reel. But be warned, some of these final moments, once uncovered, might make you wish they had stayed lost. Strange Days, 1995. The ending that was too true. Some endings don't disappear by accident. They vanish because someone, somewhere, didn't want you to see them. Strange Days, directed by Catherine Bigelow and written by James Cameron, was released in 1995 to confusion and controversy. Set on the eve of the millennium, the film explores a dystopian Los Angeles where people relive recorded memories, pleasure, violence, death through illegal tech. Its final cut ends with the corrupt cops exposed, justice served, and a spark of hope as the new year begins. But the original ending, according to early production insiders, offered no such redemption. In it, Lenny, Ralph Fiennes, exposes the truth only to be assassinated during a staged riot. The final shot shows the squid memory device looping his final moments as bootleggers sell it on the black market. The implication? The system doesn't just exploit memory, it recycles trauma for profit. There is no escape. Studio executives reportedly freaked out after early screenings. The country was still grappling with the Rodney King riots, the O.J. Simpson trial, and rising anxieties about Y2K. A nihilistic ending about institutional rot was not what they wanted. Bigelow resisted, but the edit was forced. The original footage? According to cinematographer Matthew Leonetti, it was erased, not archived. Strange Days has since become a cult classic, hailed for its prescience and boldness. But one can't help but wonder, how much bolder would it have been had it ended the way it was meant to? Did we lose a chilling prophecy about surveillance culture, or was that ending just too dangerous to exist? The Gauntlet, 1977. The final moment that Clint Eastwood buried. Clint Eastwood rarely flinches, but in The Gauntlet, he nearly did. The film follows a burned-out cop escorting a witness across hostile territory. Bullets fly, bodies fall, and by the end, Eastwood's character emerges, battered, triumphant, and defiant. But according to early drafts and production reports, the original ending was far more fatalistic. Instead of surviving the final assault, Eastwood is mortally wounded, collapsing in the arms of the witness just as the police arrive. The implication? Justice was served, but not for him. Eastwood allegedly shot both endings but opted for the heroic version in the editing room. Rumors suggest he believed the audience needed a win after such a bleak journey. No footage of the alternate ending has been found. Some claim it was destroyed. Others think Eastwood himself had it locked away. Would a dying protagonist have turned the gauntlet from popcorn action into tragic poetry? Assassins, 1995. The ending Stallone wanted gone. Assassins was never supposed to be clean-cut, at least not according to its original screenwriters, the Wachowskis. Before The Matrix, the Wachowskis wrote a dense, psychological script about two competing killers, one aging and reluctant, Stallone, the other young and unhinged, Antonio Banderas. The final scene had Stallone's character refusing to kill and being gunned down anyway, in a moment of brutal irony. The message? In the world of killers, morality is suicide. But Warner Brothers wanted a more commercial angle. They brought in Brian Helgeland to rewrite the script. Stallone, uncomfortable with dying on screen, reportedly pushed for a more victorious conclusion. The final cut shows Stallone outwitting his rival and walking away with Julianne Moore's character, intact and smiling. A happy ending that erased the existential weight of the original draft. The Wachowskis were so upset, they tried to have their names removed from the film. They were denied. Some early drafts and storyboards of the alternate ending survive online, but no footage was ever shot. Or if it was, it's never surfaced. Would the Wachowskis' original downbeat conclusion have elevated Assassins into the noir tragedy it wanted to be? The Osterman Weekend, 1983, the ending they erased from history. Sam Peckinpah's final film was supposed to go out with a bang. Instead, it disappeared under edits, and its original ending was the first casualty. The Osterman Weekend, based on a Robert Ludlum novel, was meant to be a paranoid Cold War thriller about media manipulation and political betrayal. But the version released was chopped, confusing, and critically dismissed. What most don't know is that Peckinpah had delivered a rough cut with a radically different final act. The main character, played by Rutger Hauer, discovers that not only has he been manipulated by the CIA, but he himself has unknowingly helped orchestrate the deaths of his friends. The final scene, as described by editor Edward Abrams, featured Hauer alone in a control room, surrounded by monitors looping footage of the weekend's chaos, his own guilt staring back at him. No resolution, no escape. Executives rejected the cut, citing it as incoherent and unmarketable. They ordered a complete restructuring of the last 20 minutes, including re-editing and added narration. Peckinpah reportedly disowned the version that was released. The original negative was rumored to have been taped over during studio archival consolidation in 1985. If that version still existed, would the Osterman Weekend be remembered as a cautionary tale ahead of its time, or just another studio casualty? Hard Target, 1993, the ending that Van Damme didn't want you to see. John Woo's first American film wasn't supposed to be this tame. Hard Target, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, was meant to bring Hong Kong's balletic violence to Western screens. The film delivered mostly. What it didn't deliver was Woo's original ending, a stylized bloodbath that pushed the R rating to its limits. In Woo's version, Van Damme's character kills the villain with a flaming arrow, then collapses, wounded and exhausted, as bystanders quietly walk past, indifferent. It was surreal, brutal, and pointedly anti-heroic. But Universal balked. The MPAA threatened an NC-17 rating. Van Damme, also a producer, reportedly asked for a cleaner ending to preserve his heroic image. The released version swaps the surrealism for a standard explosion and fistfight. Bootlegs of the original cut floated around Hong Kong for years, often in poor VHS quality. But the full scene has never been released officially. Was Hard Target meant to be a swan song for broken men or just another action reel? Ronin, 1998, the final betrayal we never witnessed. Ronin is a film defined by ambiguity, so it's fitting that its true ending remains a mystery. Directed by John Frankenheimer, the movie centers on ex-intelligence operatives hired to retrieve a mysterious briefcase. Loyalties shift, alliances fracture. The MacGuffin is never explained. In the final released version, De Niro's character watches as his partner drives away, the contents of the case still unknown. The mystery remains intact, but screenwriter David Mamet's original script included one more twist. De Niro's character returns to the cafe, only to find that his contact, played by Michael Lonsdale, has been killed. A handwritten note is left behind. The war is over, but not for you. This scene was shot, according to several crew reports, but later removed for pacing and tone. Frankenheimer allegedly wanted to preserve the film's focus on professionalism over politics. That ending would have reframed Ronin not as a story of mercenaries, but as one of unseen wars still being fought in the shadows. Would revealing more have cheapened the film or exposed the truth it was dancing around? Southern Comfort, 1981, the ending that got too close to home. Southern Comfort was marketed as a survival thriller, but its original ending revealed something more. A war story in disguise. Set in the Louisiana Bayou, the film follows a group of National Guardsmen hunted by Cajun locals after a training exercise goes wrong. Critics have long read it as an allegory for Vietnam young soldiers lost, confused, morally compromised. The theatrical cut ends with the survivors stumbling into a Cajun village, uncertain but seemingly safe. Ambiguity lingers, but the violence is done. What most viewers never saw was an alternate final scene where the villagers, while offering food and music, subtly reveal symbols identical to the militia the soldiers were fleeing. One survivor slowly realizes they've gone from one trap into another. Director Walter Hill reportedly favored this ending but was overruled by producers who feared political backlash. The footage was excised, and the film's subtext buried. Only fragments remain, a few unused storyboards, and a production memo referencing a mirror ending. Would this chilling circularity have pushed Southern comfort from metaphor to indictment? Rolling Thunder 1977, the final scene that never made the cut. Rolling Thunder was a revenge movie with a soul and a final moment too heavy for its own good. Starring William Devane as a Vietnam POW returning home to find his family murdered, the film dives into emotional trauma and blood-drenched vengeance. The released version ends with a violent shootout in a Mexican brothel and Devane walking away silent, victorious. But the original final scene showed Devane's character returning to his suburban home, still wearing bloodied clothes, entering the empty living room, and staring at a child's drawing on the fridge, then fade to black. It wasn't catharsis, it was emptiness. According to screenwriter Paul Schrader, the studio found it too downbeat, worried it undermined the film's commercial potential. The scene was cut before release, and the reel, according to editor Ed Abrams, was lost in a vault fire in 1982. That single moment could have reframed the entire film not as a story of revenge, but one of wasted redemption. Would Rolling Thunder have gone down as a psychological classic instead of a cult exploitation gem? The Long Kiss Goodnight, 1996, a tragic twist buried by optimism. In the age of explosive finales, The Long Kiss Goodnight flirted with something colder. Directed by Rennie Harlin and written by Shane Black, this 1996 thriller follows a suburban mom, Geena Davis, with amnesia, who rediscovers she was once a government assassin. The film ends with redemption, a farmhouse, and a phone call implying she's left that life behind. But in early versions, the phone call had a different tone. Instead of a wrong number, the call was from a government official, calling her back into action, or worse, threatening exposure. A final shot showed her looking out over the peaceful countryside, knowing she was being watched. Test audiences disliked the ambiguity. The studio opted for a feel-good ending, killing any chance of a sequel while smoothing over the espionage's moral cost. Shane Black has spoken about the alternate ending, calling it the better film, but the tougher sell. Does the feel-good finale betray the film's core message that identity can never fully be rewritten? Cobra 1986, the bloody epilogue that vanished. Stallone's Cobra was built for blood, but its bloodiest moment was cut before anyone saw it. Released in 1986, Cobra rode the wave of Reagan-era action excess, cops with sunglasses, one-liners, and zero regard for due process. The film ends with Stallone's character killing the cult leader and riding off into the sunset with Brigitte Nielsen, a clean, macho finish. But an earlier version, shown in limited internal screenings, included a grim coda. After the final battle, Cobra returns to a crime scene, the warehouse from the opening sequence, and finds a wall spray-painted with the cult's symbol. The implication? The leader was just one head of a hydra. The war wasn't over. The epilogue added a layer of unease, suggesting that violence hadn't solved anything, but the studio reportedly feared it would confuse audiences and reduce sequel potential. The scene was cut, and the negatives likely destroyed during a runtime reduction order from Warner Brothers. A few production stills exist, showing Stallone holding a lighter to graffiti in a burned-out warehouse. Would Cobra have endured as a smarter, more subversive film if it had ended with doubt instead of dominance? Dead Bang 1989, the ending that got too real. Dead Bang was supposed to be just another cop movie. It wasn't, and that's why they changed it. Starring Don Johnson as an alcoholic detective chasing a network of white supremacists, Dead Bang pushed boundaries for a late 80-second studio action film. It was raw, racial, and unusually grounded. But the original ending crossed a line the studio wasn't willing to follow. In early cuts, Johnson's character confronts the killer, a teenager indoctrinated into hate. Instead of a shootout, the scene plays out as a breakdown. The boy cries, the detective lowers his weapon, and the screen fades to black. No arrest, no justice, just a cycle too deep to fix. The studio demanded a rewrite. The final version added a fight, a gunshot, and a morally cleaner outcome. But director John Frankenheimer, who replaced the original director late in production, never spoke publicly about the change, except to say the ending wasn't ours anymore. To this day, fans debate whether the darker version might have turned Dead Bang into something more than a forgotten genre entry. Was it too honest or too dangerous? Race with the Devil, 1975. A cut that killed the message. You remember the ending, right? The RV surrounded, the flames, the realization that escape was never possible. But what if there was more? Race with the Devil is a high-octane blend of road movie and occult horror, following two couples who accidentally witness a satanic ritual and become hunted prey. The final scene, where the protagonists are encircled by fire, was terrifying, but incomplete. According to editor Tom Rolfe, the original cut included a final 45-second tracking shot revealing that the cultists were not just strangers but people the characters had met throughout the journey. Gas station attendants, motel clerks, cops. It wasn't just a chase. It was infiltration, paranoia, trust shattered. Fox executives feared the twist would politicize the horror, suggesting institutional complicity. The footage was removed, and the ending truncated for theatrical release. No surviving prints have been found, but the story persists in interviews and fanzines. A few still frames from the cut footage exist, showing familiar faces in hoods. Would that missing moment have elevated Race with the Devil from grindhouse to psychological nightmare? The Killer Elite, 1975. The ending that asked the wrong questions. Sam Peckinpah was no stranger to endings, soaked in blood and ambiguity. But with The Killer Elite, even he was forced to pull back. Set in the shadowy world of private security and CIA contractors, The Killer Elite starred James Caan and Robert Duvall in a slow-burn betrayal thriller that blurred the line between patriotism and paranoia. By the time the film wrapped, Peckinpah had crafted a final act full of hesitation, silence, and unanswered questions. In the original ending, Caan's character maimed, disillusioned, and bitter walks away from everything, leaving the audience to wonder whether any of it had meaning. It was a bleak, philosophical conclusion. But test audiences weren't ready. Neither was United Artists. The studio insisted on something more decisive. So Peckinpah begrudgingly inserted a final confrontation, giving Caan a semi-heroic finish and a parting line that hinted at redemption. Film scholars have long debated whether the earlier cut was closer to Peckinpah's true vision. Unfortunately, the original reels were reportedly destroyed during a legal dispute over editing rights in 1976. In an era obsessed with black and white endings, did Peckinpah's gray zone finale simply arrive too early? Black Sunday, 1977. The ending that never exploded. You can still feel the tension in Black Sunday, a pulse-pounding thriller that nearly ends in mass destruction. But the version you've seen? That's not the one they originally filmed. Directed by John Frankenheimer, Black Sunday is a political action thriller where terrorists plot to detonate a bomb at the Super Bowl. It was released in 1977, an era already anxious with Cold War paranoia and domestic unrest. The stakes were apocalyptic, the execution relentless. And then, the ending changed. In the original final sequence, the blimp packed with explosives collided directly with the stadium, unleashing a horrifying explosion. The message was brutal. Sometimes, evil succeeds. According to production insiders, the scene was shot, edited, and scored. But after early screenings left audiences visibly shaken and TV networks hesitating to promote the film, Paramount ordered a reshoot. The released version shows the bomb narrowly averted, the blimp crashing harmlessly into the water. A heroic save. A sigh of relief. But a lie, compared to what was meant to be. Cinematographer John A. Alonzo once hinted in an interview that he preferred the original ending's impact. It was honest, it didn't flinch, but I guess that's not what they wanted on a Sunday afternoon. The raw footage has never resurfaced. It may have been destroyed or buried in Paramount's vaults. Would the original ending have turned Black Sunday into a cult classic of bleak realism? Or was the rewrite the only way it could survive mainstream release? Nighthawks, 1981, The Death That Was Erased. This was never supposed to be a happy ending. In the original cut of Nighthawks, the final scene left no room for triumph, only blood. Released in 1981, Nighthawks was a gritty, nihilistic thriller starring Sylvester Stallone and Rutger Hauer, set in a post-Vietnam New York teetering on collapse. Stallone plays Deke Da Silva, a cop chasing down an international terrorist. But what most audiences never saw was the film's original ending where Da Silva dies. The studio originally allowed director Bruce Malmuth and screenwriter David Shaber to push the boundaries. In early test screenings, Da Silva's death shocked audiences. It was brutal, sudden, and emotionally disorienting, an unflinching comment on how even heroes don't survive in a world this broken. But Universal panicked. Executives feared backlash against killing off a star like Stallone at the height of his rising fame. Within weeks, the scene was reshooted, Da Silva survives, and the terrorist is gunned down in a satisfying twist. The dark cut was shelved. Today, no known footage exists, only whispered mentions by crew members, and a few press reports from early test audiences. The irony? That darker ending might have aged better. Stallone's survival plays into standard action tropes, but the lost version reportedly gave Nighthawks a gravitas closer to Taxi Driver than Cobra. Did we lose a masterstroke of subversive cinema? Or did the studio save audiences from a film too ahead of its time? Executive Decision 1996. The deleted death no one talks about. You think you know who dies in Executive Decision, but the most disturbing death was never shown. This 1996 thriller, starring Kurt Russell and Steven Seagal, was infamous for killing off Seagal's character early in the film, a shock that stunned audiences. But what few know is that another major character was originally meant to die just minutes before the credits rolled. In the original cut, after the terrorist threat is neutralized and the hijacked plane safely lands, Halle Berry's flight attendant character is shot by a hidden accomplice posing as a rescue worker. The final shot showed Kurt Russell holding her hand as paramedics rush in an eerie reminder that violence doesn't end neatly. The scene was test screened, but quickly cut after negative audience reactions. Studio executives felt it punished the audience after a win and risked alienating viewers who had grown attached to Berry's character. The footage is now considered lost, and neither the theatrical release nor home video editions have ever included it, not even as a deleted scene. According to a crew member who worked on the sound mix, the moment felt too real for a popcorn movie. In the end, the studio chose survival over subversion. But imagine the conversation shift had Executive Decision ended with hope, heartbreak, and one final gunshot. Closing thoughts. We often remember films by how they end. A final image, a final breath, a final truth. But what happens when those endings are taken from us? These missing scenes aren't just lost footage, they're lost intentions. Alternate realities where the hero doesn't survive, where the system wins, or where silence says more than any explosion. In erasing those moments, studios didn't just change stories, they reshaped how we remember them. Maybe some of these cuts were justified. Maybe others were acts of creative cowardice. But in every case, something was hidden, a risk not taken, a question left unasked. So now we ask you, did we lose better films or simply darker ones? Which of these missing endings would you want to see brought back? And when the truth threatens the illusion, should art stay honest or stay safe? Let us know which lost finale haunts you most.